Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations on the Porch. I'm Heidi, and I am here with my big sister Rattles and my sweet nephew Devlin,
Yes.
and he's going to participate however he feels like today because he's a cat. And we're going to continue our conversation that we started the other day. And what made it sound interesting to me, Rattles was talking about a concept that we were exposed to when we worked with chimpanzees, and it was arousal level. And she was saying that when she learned that in at the chimp lab, it gave her language that she could talk about how she works with wildlife. And I'm gonna let you define it. I think you do a better job explaining it clearly than I do.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but arousal level, as I explain it, usually is sort of a measure of the amount of excitement or energy in a situation. So, to put it in really simple examples, if you're hanging out in the yard with a friend on a summer day and neither of you is sure whether you can spare the energy to get up and get another beer out of the cooler, that's a low arousal situation. If you've just won the lottery and you're jumping up and down and screaming, that's a high arousal situation. If you are just going about your day in the ordinary manner, we would call that a moderate level arousal level.
When you do work with wildlife, when you're out and about, how is it that you actually just how is it that you're able to watch wildlife so effectively when other people can't? A lot of people go out and they say they don't see any birds, they don't see raccoons, they don't see deer or snakes. How is it that you're using that to be effective in seeing and engaging with wildlife?
Yeah, seeing it is more about observation, I think, than arousal level. But once you've seen it, for me, monitoring, keeping my own arousal level at a low level helps with, especially with critters that are prey critters, because they universally understand the body language of predators. It's their sort that's what keeps them alive. So if I'm approaching somebody and I'm all wound up and I'm excited and I'm sneaking and trying to hide behind a tree and being really sneaky, I'm giving off that high arousal, predatory kind of thing. Whereas if I'm just walking in the meadow and maybe even pulling a piece of grass and chewing on it, the deer aren't going to get anywhere near as worried about me because I'm just out there in a low arousal state doing my thing. And I'm not giving off that vibe that's going to wind them up.
So one of the things that you just said that it highlights that the concept isn't as simple as it sounds. It is and it isn't. But you were saying that, when there's a predator who's stalking, on the one hand, it's like when you don't have the energy to move and it's low key. That's one way of talking about low arousal. And, big excitement is really exciting and high arousal. But stalking, when I think of a leopard or a lion stalking, it's like on the surface it looks low energy, but that intensity is higher arousal, like that focus, don't you think? Or
Yeah,
no?
the muscle tension and the quick movements. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
and
so
and
you
so
have to
there's
look at the more subtle elements of it, the muscle tension, the quick movement, the abrupt movement, that kind of thing.
the concept isn't just like jumping up and down, and so it's level of energy, but you also in your definition description whatever talked about tension and intensity. Yeah,
Yeah.
I find that that concept comes in handy when I deal with even friends. I've had friends who came to me and told me about a cancer diagnosis, and after we talked about it, one of my friends in particular, I remember her coming back and saying, I just love coming to talk to you about these serious things because you just stay so low key. And so it's like regulating, and even inside where I was upset and so forth, like monitoring my own level and maintaining a lower level of arousal for the sake of the other person helps keep keep the friendship going and helps keep that, a stressful situation less stressful, kind of. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's what my friend Kiyoki calls not being massive Bob, trying to find some equanimity and and not allowing the circumstances around you to push you into a high arousal state. So there's an element of that in there. And yes, I did mention my friend Kiyoki again. I just do that. I just do
Yeah.
that.
And he will be back.
He will
He
be
will be
back.
back. Yeah. 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 I can remember when I visited you on Lookout, you showed me how to interact with deer, and
Mhm.
you were out there and you were just walking really slowly and calmly, and I remember you put a Pringle in your mouth and you just held it there, and the deer came over. I think it was deer. Was it deer or is it bighorn? I think it was deer.
It was deer, but it was not a Pringle. There's no way I would put a Pringle in my mouth. It was a
I,
tortilla chip.
a tortilla chip.
Pringles are
I
Pringles.
in
Yeah.
my head in my head it's a Pringle chip. Anyway, I'll replace that image now. But I can remember that as long as you kept that low level, and then you had me do the same thing, and they were fine around me as
Hmm.
long as I maintained
Yeah.
that level.
Yep.
So I think when people see wildlife, a lot of times the first instinct is to go, "Oh, look, a deer!" And that level of excitement immediately alerts whoever the wildlife
The
is.
pointing thing wants us for you to reach toward them. One of the things that happens with me with wildlife, but it can, I think, be effective with humans as well, is people wonder why I talk to rattlesnakes when I'm around rattlesnakes.
Mhm.
And it's not that I think that they understand English. It's that humans are such verbal creatures that we cannot unlink our verbal and our nonverbal. It's virtually impossible to smile gently while shouting angrily. It, so if I have to worry about monitoring my arousal level around rattlesnakes, but by just speaking in a particular way, in a very lazy, hey bud, we're just having a beer kind of way, then I don't have to worry about the rest of my body language because my body language, my nonverbal is going to follow that, and they're going to get that low arousal vibe from me without me having to pay that much attention to it because the nonverbal is going to follow the verbal.
Yeah.
So that's why
And
I talk to them.
actually likewise, and it might have even been you who told me this, but if you encounter like a cougar, the worst thing you can do is run, and the best thing you can do is scream and yell and swear up a storm and threaten it with the horrible things you're going to do to it, because again, your level of intimidation is gonna increase if you're actually speaking aggressive words. You can get a higher level of arousal if the words coming out of your mouth are very angry, and you have a better chance with a cougar than if
And
you
with a
run.
human predator,
Oh, actually, that too. Yeah, good
because
point.
they want easy targets. If you're not an easy target, and if you're walking with purpose at a moderate arousal level and not just kind of slinking around in a low arousal, I'm not paying attention and I'm tired kind of level,
Yeah,
that gives you some protection from human predators.
yeah. And I would assume that police are monitoring their own level of arousal all the time in order to control the arousal level of
Yeah,
situations.
I think they do. There are situations, and I watch because I'm interested in how they work. I watch a lot of their procedural stuff, and it is interesting to see that they do their best to do that, but there are times when they're coming into a situation ramped up because, say, yeah, the perpetrator took off from a traffic stop, drove 100 miles an hour. They've had to follow them at 100 miles an hour. Their adrenaline's up, their arousal level is up. And then when they come into the situation where the person finally stops, sometimes the cop ends up escalating sort of unnecessarily because they've got adrenaline in the system and they've let themselves get into a high arousal state, and it takes them a while to drop that level, and you can see where the interaction sometimes goes wrong because of that.
Yeah. I remember a former student of mine who I only had him as a student, but he became a police officer, and I think you trained with him at a some kind of a training. Do you
But
remember?
also,
Yeah, Nelson. And I remember you telling,
very well.
actually, I'll let you just tell it because I love that. I love hearing that example of him in that training.
Yeah, he was so good. He was so good. He was a very calm, quiet sort of guy. But they teach them in training to use what they call a takedown voice. And he had the best takedown voice in the world, as quiet and polite and mild-mannered as he was. I was assigned in one case to do a scenario where I was carrying a gun in my pocket, the pocket of my jacket, but I was supposed to bail out of the car and run at him, screaming that I'd been kidnapped and the guy in the car had kidnapped me. And he stopped me in my tracks and had me on the ground in about 3 seconds because he spotted something odd, and he just used that takedown voice, and that was just, it was like, yep, I'm stopped. I'm stopped.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to go back to something that you brought up, and it reminded me of the chimps, which is where we kind of started. You said that the reason that you talk to rattlesnakes is because humans can't separate out language and arousal, that they just go hand in hand. And I remember when working with the chimps, one of the things that we always had to do was in a high arousal situation where the chimps, maybe there was a big fight or maybe somebody was upset with you and they were displaying aggressively, whatever, was to sign, because the chimps can't separate out the arousal level either. And so
Right.
they couldn't be incredibly aggressive and processing language at the same time. So
Which is why
processing,
Lewis would close his eyes.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So that was one of the ways that we could mitigate that high arousal, was
Mhm.
to just start signing. And you could even, start signing, can you please, come on, sit, give me a hug.
Mhm.
And things that would really tug at their, yeah,
Yeah.
you'd have to, tell them, oh, you're making me cry. um, but things that would tug on their heartstrings, or things that
Mhm.
they just couldn't ignore, because that would get them to like slowly come down. And yeah, yeah, and
I have a
Lewis and Dar would just
mhm.
would look away or close their eyes.
Yep,
Yeah.
because I couldn't see you signing. I have a very funny story, and you were involved, but I don't know if you will remember it or not. But one of the things when you're new there and you have to get used to the fact that 150 pounds of chimp can hit the fence with great force 6 inches from your face when you're trying to clean. They're not really happy about new people cleaning sometimes. Um, I deliberately trained a habit. I made myself when there was a big slam that startled me, I taught myself to say, "Hi, sweetie," and it worked really well at the chimp lab. And it worked really well until Heidi and I were out for dinner one night, and the cute waiter startled me by coming up beside me. Whoops.
I don't remember that. Was that at the Valley Cafe? I know who you're talking about.
Whoopsie.
Oh, that's so fun. Well, you've had clients at the shop say "love you, sweetie" or something like that on the phone. Yeah,
Yeah, and then apologize profusely.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, yeah. So this notion of being able to recognize arousal level and to control your own, it just seems like it's relevant in every aspect of life, and spousal arguments. I mean, each individual is contributing to it. I'm just thinking my own.
Mhm.
Um, that it if you refuse to move out of a low or moderate level of arousal, the situation can't get as high arousal.
Mhm.
Um, and and sometimes, and lots of people know, sometimes you just need to leave. But in normal arguments, the argument doesn't have to get to a high level arousal if you choose to not move there.
Mhm.
And and if you choose not to move up, like teaching in my classroom, I have students who cheat and they get caught cheating and I have to deal with them. And I could get angry, but I don't have to get into a high arousal to make the point and to have the student understand. And if understanding is the goal, high arousal isn't the way to do it. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I was
I mean,
just actually, my mind was going to a similar thing with a cat, actually. And I had a kitty that I never shouted at because I had taught him some language and I would tell him what to do and he would do it. And I brought him home to visit my parents and he would walk where there were delicate things. And if I just said, hey, get down, because he didn't know where he wasn't supposed to walk there. He knew at home. I would say, nope, get down. And he would just hop down. But both parents would immediately, when they saw him in a place, would immediately fly into a high arousal state in a panic and shout, and then he'd get
anyway,
startled and knock stuff over.
yeah.
whereas if whereas if I told him in a nice low, nice moderate arousal level thing to just get down, he would carefully pick his way across and step down, and there would be no damage done. And I think that kind of is a nice metaphor for the relationship stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you both get high arousal, something's going to get broken.
Yeah. And actually allowing levels of arousal to be relevant, I think, is also important. And I'm thinking of a family that I babysat when I was relatively young, and the parents had one level of if the kids were doing something wrong, there was only one level, and it was the highest level of yelling.
Mhm.
I don't yell, and there's no way that I could match the parents yelling. And so there was nothing effective with those kids. And the only thing that was useful was to threaten to tell their parents because I couldn't yell loudly enough. So there was no distinction between like I spilled a little something on the floor if I'm the kid, and I'm in the middle of the road and a car's coming at you. It was the same level of, you know, and so for the kids, that arousal level wasn't information anymore. It was meaningless. And I think making sure that in life those arousal levels are relevant, I think is useful.
Yeah, there was a comedian. I wish I could remember who he was. He was talking about raising teenagers, and he sort of inadvertently got into the arousal level thing. He was saying the problem with the teenager is that there's an ex murderer coming in the door, and I can't find my cell phone charger. Are the exact same level of arousal. It's you can never tell when there's a really bad thing going on because it's all the same.
Yeah. And it is something that you can learn. It's
Yeah.
not um it's you have people who are high arousal people, but they can learn to be lower arousal, and likewise people who are low arousal can actually learn to be more expressive or more energetic or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a learnable thing, and you can apply it to
And especially if you understand,
situations.
once you understand it,
Yeah, you
and
can't
the
you
hard
can't
thing is,
unknow it.
yeah, but sometimes the hard thing for people is to turn the lens on themselves
Hmm.
and recognize, oh, this is my high arousal state.
Yeah.
This is my low arousal state. This is kind of where I am in the middle,
Hmm.
um, and recognize it. But that takes a little self-reflection to look at when your high arousal state is affecting
Yeah.
my little boy who just jumped down. If I'm in a panic trying to get out the door looking for stuff, guaranteed he's right under my feet and right in the middle of everything. And it takes me a second to connect. Like he's not being annoying. He's just responding to my hyper anxiety trying to get out the door. And so he rises to that level because he doesn't know what's
Hmm.
going on, but there's something exciting going on.
Right, right.
So
And he
it,
doesn't want to miss it.
he doesn't want to miss it. Yeah. So it's, even working with him, and even though I understand high arousal, understand the whole arousal level thing, it's useful for me to catch it in that moment and look at myself and go, no, it's because you're running around like a mad person. That's why he's getting into everything and or under your feet and everything. It's not his fault.
Yeah. You got any more really good examples?
Um, one from one of my favorite books, but you looked up the author for me and I can't remember his name.
Oh, Monty.
No, no, no.
No, different one.
Yeah. Anyway, his book is Verbal Judo.
Oh, that's right.
He has a great book about he was one of the first people to work in hostage negotiation. He sort of defined a lot of the basics of hostage negotiation. And he talks about being a rookie officer serving with a very experienced officer and going into a domestic dispute situation. And he thought that his partner was going to just walk in the door and take control of the situation. And his partner knocked on the door, opened the door and walked in, saw the two people screaming at each other, picked up their newspaper and sat on their sofa and started leafing through the newspaper and periodically putting in a comment like, oh, look at this house for, way lower than it should be. And after a while, the two people stopped screaming and fighting and started looking at him like he was crazy. At which point he was able to talk to them, but he did it by going in and confronting their high arousal behavior with his own ridiculously low arousal behavior. That interception that worked because it
Yeah.
caused them to be curious in a way that couldn't maintain their high arousal at the moment.
Yeah. That's an awesome example.
Yeah, I love
And
that example.
and especially of being able to manipulate the arousal level deliberately.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's George Thompson and Jerry Jenkins.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely read that book. It's a great book on negotiating all sorts of situations and fascinating to see the situations that he was in, but
mhm,
also a lot of good tools to take away, probably good tools for parenting teenagers as well.
yeah. Well, and I think this concept of, I mean, recognizing arousal level, I think is just another tool in the toolbox for engaging with the world.
Yeah. And I know with chimps, sometimes you just have to recognize that when they're at that level of arousal, you can't deal with them.
Right.
You can't deal with them like rational beings anyway.
Hmm.
And that's something you sometimes people don't necessarily realize with humans, that sometimes they're in a state where you're not going to be able to deal with them, and trying to hit them with logic over and over when they're in that high arousal state is just going to get them to come at you.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes, yeah, I think recognition of that can be really useful, and knowing when to step back and when to just let them be in that state until they settle on their own, or
Yeah. Yeah. And with the chimps, knowing when you could use language to bring it down
yeah,
and when you walk away and
yeah, and yeah, and the same with humans, because you don't necessarily, I mean, there are situations where you can't, they're just going to be that way until
yep.
you, yeah. And that guy who did the verbal judo, one of the things that he recognized working with humans was that when you're arresting someone, and they get into that high arousal state, sometimes they just need to be the big man and talk big and talk loud and save face. And so he had a principle that said they can say what they want as long as they do what I say. And so he would have no problem with somebody cursing at him and screaming at him and doing whatever, as long as they were generally moving in the direction that he was trying to move them. Yeah. And he wasn't in a position to walk away, but he was in a position to know that at this point, trying to stop them from doing that was going to be counterproductive.
All righty. Well, shall we turn the light off?
Sure, we can turn the light off.
Alrighty. So any last minute things for the good of the order before the light goes off?
Nope, I'd love to hear how viewers might use that in their own lives, or maybe they're already using it and they didn't have a name for it the way I was before I went to the gym lab. Be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
If you use it, if you try it out, let us know how it goes.
All right. So we'll see you next time on the porch. Bye.
Yeah, ready.